Do you know why some women feel intense sexual desire for one man, but feel absolutely nothing for another man who looks better, texts more, and treats her perfectly? Seriously. Think about that. Why does female sexual desire sometimes grow through emotional tension instead of comfort? Why do some women become sexually obsessed with emotionally unavailable men? And why does modern dating in the United States feel more emotionally chaotic than ever before? Because female sexual desire is deeply psychological, and most men completely misunderstand it. They think female sexual desire is only about looks, money, status, or sex itself. But psychologists discovered something way darker. Female sexual desire is often connected to emotional stimulation, fantasy, tension, confidence, uncertainty, validation, and emotional intensity. And once you understand how female sexual psychology actually works, you start seeing relationships very differently, especially in today's world of Instagram attention, dating apps, hookup culture, ghosting, emotional games, and endless sexual validation. So stay till the end, because the final point explains why emotional chaos can literally increase female sexual obsession. And trust me, that part is crazy. Before we start, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and comment disarray below if you think modern dating completely changed relationships and sexual attraction. Now let's talk about the dark psychology behind female sexual desire. A lot of men think female sexual desire works exactly like male sexual desire. It usually doesn't. For many men, sexual attraction starts visually, but female sexual desire often starts psychologically first. That's why the same woman can suddenly feel sexual chemistry with one man, while feeling emotionally disconnected from another man who technically checks every box. Psychologists found that emotional state changes attraction dramatically. Meaning, female sexual desire is heavily influenced by mood, emotional tension, confidence, emotional safety, anticipation, and fantasy. That's why emotional energy matters so much. That's why confidence changes attraction. That's why tension changes attraction. That's why emotional excitement changes sexual desire. And modern dating made this way more intense. Social media created constant stimulation, constant attention, constant flirting, constant validation, constant emotional comparison, constant sexual energy. And when the brain becomes addicted to emotional stimulation, healthy connection can start feeling boring. That's dark, but it's true. Now let's talk about sexual tension, because this is where female sexual psychology becomes extremely powerful. One psychological study explained that uncertainty increases emotional focus. Read that again. Uncertainty increases emotional focus. That's why mixed signals can feel addictive. That's why emotionally unavailable men sometimes trigger stronger female sexual desire initially. Not because toxicity is healthy, but because unpredictability stimulates dopamine. And dopamine plays a massive role in sexual desire and emotional attachment. Think about modern dating culture in America. Late replies, seen messages, hot and cold behavior, random affection, then sudden emotional distance. That emotional roller coaster creates obsession loops. And obsession increases fantasy. Fantasy increases emotional intensity. And emotional intensity can increase female sexual desire. That's why some women say things like, "I can't stop thinking about him," even when they know the relationship is unhealthy, because emotional unpredictability keeps the brain emotionally engaged. Honestly, a lot of modern relationships are running on dopamine addiction, more than genuine emotional connection. And, people hate hearing that. Now here's another truth most men ignore. Confidence strongly affects female sexual attraction. Not fake internet alpha behavior. Not acting toxic. Real emotional confidence. A calm man who controls his emotions usually appears more sexually attractive, because confidence signals emotional stability, independence, and self-worth. Meanwhile, desperation destroys sexual tension fast. Over-texting, begging, constant reassurance, obsessive attention, emotional panic. Women can feel that energy immediately. That's why some women lose sexual attraction when a man becomes emotionally needy. Harsh? Yeah, but psychologically it makes sense. Neediness communicates fear. Confidence communicates security, and female sexual desire often responds strongly to emotional security mixed with mystery. That's why Charisma Beats looks way more often than social media admits. You've probably seen average-looking men attract beautiful women effortlessly. Meanwhile, attractive men struggle badly, because female sexual desire is not only visual, it's emotional and psychological. Now let's talk about fantasy. Because fantasy is one of the darkest parts of female sexual psychology. A lot of female sexual desire grows through imagination. That's why emotional buildup matters. That's why anticipation matters. That's why tension matters. That's why emotional conversation matters. A woman may become sexually attracted to how a man makes her feel psychologically before anything physical even happens. His voice, his eye contact, his confidence, his emotional control, his presence. The brain starts creating emotional fantasy around him, and fantasy amplifies female sexual desire massively. That's why mystery can increase attraction, because when information is incomplete, the brain fills the gaps emotionally, and sometimes the fantasy becomes stronger than reality itself. That's honestly insane when you think about it. Now let's talk about social media, because social media completely changed female sexual psychology in the United States. Instagram, TikTok, dating apps, DM culture. Women today receive more attention and sexual validation online than ever before in human history. And psychologists warn that constant validation changes dopamine sensitivity, meaning the brain slowly adapts to non-stop stimulation. More excitement, more attention, more flirting, more emotional intensity, more validation, more sexual attention, and eventually calm connection feels less emotionally exciting. That's why so many modern relationships struggle with boredom, commitment issues, emotional detachment, and comparison culture. Modern dating became emotional entertainment. Everybody wants attention, everybody wants validation, everybody wants stimulation, everybody wants excitement. And honestly, that environment changes female sexual desire psychologically. Because when emotional stimulation becomes unlimited, emotional satisfaction becomes harder to maintain. Now here comes the controversial part. Some women become emotionally attached to toxic relationships because emotional chaos creates intense psychological bonding. One moment, affection. Next moment, distance. Then passion again. That cycle creates emotional dependency. Psychologists call this intermittent reinforcement. And it's extremely powerful psychologically. That's why some women stay emotionally obsessed with toxic men even when they know the relationship damages them emotionally. The emotional highs become addictive, and addiction can feel very similar to intense sexual desire. That doesn't mean healthy love is weak. It means emotional chaos overstimulates the nervous system. And modern dating culture constantly glorifies emotional chaos. Movies glorify toxic passion. Social media glorifies attention games. Dating culture glorifies emotional unavailability. So many women unknowingly confuse emotional anxiety with sexual chemistry. And honestly, that realization changes how you see relationships forever. Now here's the darkest truth of all. Female sexual desire and emotional addiction are not the same thing. A woman can feel intense sexual chemistry with someone who is emotionally terrible for her, because attraction is not always logical. Sometimes female sexual desire is connected to validation, insecurity, fantasy, emotional tension, ego stimulation, or attachment patterns. That's not always love. Sometimes it's emotional survival mixed with chemistry. And modern culture constantly confuses obsession with passion. That's the trap. People think emotional chaos equals deeper attraction. But emotionally mature relationships usually feel calmer, safer, healthier, and more emotionally stable. The problem is, many emotionally overstimulated minds interpret peace as boredom, and that creates destructive relationship cycles over and over again. So the next time someone says, female sexual desire is simple, remember this. Female sexual psychology is deeply emotional and psychological. Sexual desire is influenced by fantasy, dopamine, confidence, validation, emotional stimulation, uncertainty, emotional tension, attachment patterns, and modern social conditioning. And in today's dating culture, those psychological triggers are stronger than ever before. If this video opened your eyes even a little, subscribe right now, like the video, and comment below. What do you think controls attraction most today? And if you stayed till the end, trust me, you now understand female sexual desire differently than most people.